And it is a warm afternoon here in Tel Aviv, and I have the privilege of talking to Ram from Tilda Bio. Ram, good afternoon.
Hi,
Or
Danny. Nice to be here. Thanks
or
for
good
having me.
or good morning, should I say. Um, we're talking just before the podcast about the fact that we both coming from an engineering background, and we're sort of like exchanging views on this thing, and let's start from that point where we're saying that we both like to use our engineering chops, right?
Yeah. Well, my background's as a computer scientist, and I've probably been coding since middle school. So it's one of my hobbies and a hobby I really enjoy even today. So I've never really like left it, I would say. I've been close to engineering at the code level. I still code whenever I have an opportunity with Tilda. So very hands-on, I would say, it's more of a place for me to relax and enjoy a hobby, really. So that's where I come from.
Oh, I totally agree with you. When I can put on a headset, and start writing code, that's that's when I'm happy. That's when I'm really happy.
Yeah, unfortunately, we don't get to do that as much at this stage of our company, but certainly did that when we were first starting off for every company I've sort of been part of and built. So
So yeah, it's like,
seems like the starting point.
yeah, exactly. So tell me the journey to Tilda Bio, and tell me what Tilda Bio does exactly, okay, in your words.
Yeah, and we are Tilda Research. The domain is tilda.bio though, so just the name out there. And so our journey, or my journey particularly, is I've been in tech entrepreneurship for quite some time. Right out of college, went into an early stage startup, built that company out, and had a very interesting career in terms of seeing the company grow from less than 100 people to maybe about 15, 20,000 people by the time I was leaving, and saw phenomenal growth and success and sort of understanding of how do you build phenomenal products and how do you gain traction, how do you use the markets in a way where you can really leverage what you're building from a product perspective to affect the market. So in this case, it was a virtualization company. We were building one of the first sets of virtualization technology, and I had a very nice vantage point in sort of seeing how that went. And then after that, built a mobile security company. It was a venture-backed company. I was the founder for that company the first time I founded a company. Built it. We exited the company. Eventually, we took the combined company public. And then I sort of was contemplating on what to do next after that. And I think for me, healthcare was a calling. I really felt it was a very impactful place to be if I could choose my career path going forward. And however, it's tough to get into healthcare, as you know, as an engineer or as somebody who's not been in the space. It's not easy to sort of have an unfair advantage, as they call it, as Paul Graham had described from Y Combinator. Like you have to find your edge, and it was hard for me to find it, but I did eventually run into a few really great individuals who happened to then become my co-founders. They were physician scientists, and they were working on an idea called well, it was a liquid biopsy. So it was a blood-based assay, blood-based test in the oncology space. And I was fascinated by it primarily because a majority of the value in this assay was the algorithm in which you process the data which came out of this gene sequencer, and then extracting some kind of an insight. And because I understood it more from like a data perspective, I really felt, okay, this is where I can actually add value given my background in data and AI and things like that. So that's when I transitioned into the healthcare field, and we had a great time. We built that company over 4 years. We ran a large clinical trial, a global study. So got to learn the ropes of what does it mean to be a sponsor, especially a biotech. Fundraising, launching a trial, working with multiple sites across the world, sample collection, all the vendor management. So I think I really got into the nuts and bolts of it towards the part of later part of the company, because we had all the traditional issues which I think most biotech people will have. You have limited runway, limited funding. but you need to really maximize your outcomes. And everyone had to wear all hats to kind of, all hands on deck to get to the end goal, right? We were fortunate in the sense that I think we had an excellent product, great data. Ultimately, we did get acquired by Roche Foundation Medicine. So I decided to then sort of get into, just furthering into what I really felt was a pain point, even while building Lexant, which is there simply is no infrastructure or product which felt like it was built to modernize the clinical trial paradigm. It's very manual, everything's slow, expensive, and we're
Yeah.
sort of stuck in that situation, right? So I felt it at Lexan because I was on the other side of the sponsor. We really felt like we could have done better, but ultimately we're glad where the outcome went. But I think there is a tremendous amount of opportunity and good we can do as technologists if we can actually bring better solutions for this market. And I think my take at that point was that there's a phenomenal well, I truly did believe that we are going to have some kind of a breakthrough on the AI side. This was in like early 2020, right around the COVID time when I was contemplating what to do next, because we just exited Lexant. And I didn't know when it was going to happen, but I knew that, we have an industry which is heavily manual, very like, the entire process is 100% manual. And on the other side, I was reading literature and I was getting really excited about the potential for some kind of a high amount of intelligence, a breakthrough, right? So putting those two together, I sort of just dug deeper into the clinical research space. My first decision was actually not to go start building product, but to just learn more about the industry and the workflow. So what I did was I acquired a research site where I am in California, and started spending time at the site. I started coordinating under the physicians. So it's just one of these things where I'm a very hands-on learner. So just got into the process because I knew from a sponsor side what it looked like, but I didn't actually understand the process from the site side. I think which is a very important part of this whole equation. And I think that vantage point is not quite present, at least from when I was looking at the products, which I mean, in hindsight, when I look at the products which were being given to sites from sponsors or CROs and so on and so forth, you could very clearly tell the people developing these products were not their users, which I think many other places you could say your product team and your engineering team are generally very good at what they do if they're also users of the same product. I
That's
think
right.
consumer tends to be that way. Enterprise is a little harder because it's you're sort of removed from your customer. Um, but I had an opportunity to do this and learn, and I think by in a year and a half into that journey, we had some early signs of intelligence through the LLM revolution, which is now in full hold, and we knew exactly what the opportunities were, and we started building that product out. So that's kind of how we got started with Tilda and where we are right now.
That's a great story, and it's a terrific story, and it's true. The industry, the clinical trials industry, is. I had a conversation with someone from Pfizer a few years ago, and I said stuck in the early '90s, and she said no, that's being charitable. It's stuck in the late '50s, and it's true. It's really fragmented, and as you say, the kind of systems that are being produced by software vendors are don't look like they were actually designed by people who actually use the application in the field, and that's actually a common problem. When we started, our goal was to make clinical data management easy. We were looking at a different kind of problem. I was taking the tech paradigm of observability into clinical trial monitoring, and we felt that it was something that we could just copy the paradigm and sort of adjust it, and then make monitoring so much easier by automating things. And when the sponsors were willing to tango with us, then the results were outstanding. But unfortunately, most sponsors, you say monitoring, they say, oh, that means 100% SDB, right? I said, no, that's not monitoring. That's just covering your ass. That's all it is. So I totally get what you're saying. And so tell me more. I mean, I saw the website. You're doing it sounds like an assistant for sites. but I'm not sure I understand. So just give me the quick elevator pitch. Say I'm a, say I'm a sponsor or site. First of all, who's your customer?
Yeah. So we have customers across the ecosystem of clinical trials. So that would be sponsors, CROs, who are service providers, and sites. So all three of them are our customers right now, and we've got very related but different type of products for each of them. And the product itself is an AI teammate. So as you've said, it's an assistant, or you can actually put it the other way. An AI teammate, in my opinion, is more about an agent which is doing the work, and you are the person who's supervising that agent or that teammate, right? So it's a paradigm where it's not really the AI sort of assisting you. The AI is actually doing the work, and you're sort of taking the role of a more of a managerial or a supervision role. So what we have done is we've built AI teammates for various functions in the clinical research workflow. And depending on which organization we work with, we have a flavor of that persona or the teammate who can then come in and increase your productivity, accelerate your timelines, all the good stuff you get with a very competent AI teammate, right? So that's pretty much what our product looks like. I kind of said the most obvious bet to me right now is that we've stayed in the conversational AI paradigm for quite some time. In the last 2 years, a lot of the introduction to AI for most people has been through ChatGPT. So it's a very question and answer backed based question or a situation. So I think it's great from like an information retrieval style problem. So you have questions, it gives you answers, right? This is where most of the active users today from AI perspective. Where we are is what we call more of an agentic version of AI. So this is different because our AI teammates have the capability to actually do work. So you can assign a job and they can go ahead and get the job done, and they'll come back to you whenever they need more information or they need better oversight or whatever it might be, right? So just thinking about that paradigm, you start to think, well, we really need to re-engineer the way all of this work gets done, and you need better tooling, different types of tooling, so that you can actually monitor the AI, you can train it, you can observe it, you can set up guardrails. There's a whole set of properties which you need to now think about, which gets you into the type of software and platforms we are currently building called Tilda Sense. So yeah, that's what we do, and we go across the spectrum of various functions in clinical trials management, and hence we have a broad set of customers.
So I saw a case study. I think it was with Viva Vault, wasn't it?
Yes, we do integrate into Viva. So I think we can talk about that. So one area of regulatory teammates which we work on is managing your inspection readiness as well as compliance more from like a regulatory perspective. So there are several really taxing or very slow, I would say, difficult processes which are in every sponsor, every CRO goes through right now. So we can talk about a few of them. For example, one of them would be your entire document lifecycle when you're starting up a study. So this would typically involve you starting your study, figuring out how many sites you have, reaching out to the sites whenever they're selected, going through the whole onboarding process, bringing in documentation. You're sending out documents as well as a CRO or a sponsor to say, here's my essential document package, which you need to fill out for your startup. And you also need to send me back your other sets of documents. These could be CVs, this could be FDFs, financial disclosure forms, investigation brochures, TSPs, so on and so forth, right? There's a plethora of exchange of documents which go back and forth. And then there's various levels of and layers of QC, which also happens. So there's a tremendously manual and slow and prone to error process today, which is not a very scalable process, and hence there's a lot of time and money invested during this phase of this trial in the current paradigm. Now, what we've done is we have a fully competent ICH GCP trained and trained on various other reference models, for example, DIA reference models and things like that. So we have an AI teammate, which is a regulatory AI teammate, and you can basically give it the task which I just spoke about. Could be study startup, could be site startup, and it is the one managing back and forth the email communication, text communication, phone communication. So you can sort of say, hey, like, you go do this work. I need you to activate 100 sites, 200 sites, or even 5 sites. And I need you to maintain it also. So every time, every month, make sure everything's okay. Make sure the IRB filings are okay, like just kind of keep the posture going. And then whenever the AI teammate needs some kind of attention, it sort of pings you back, whoever the relevant person is. So in other words, you're now sort of bringing this very high amount of productivity gain to an industry which otherwise would be entirely manual and non-scalable. So that's one example of where we have a lot of indoor, quite a few customers using it, and growing quite a bit in that area.
So I think that was the case study that I saw that said 40% reduction in study activation timelines, 50% less time to complete regulatory tasks, and 30% faster processing documents from creation to finalization. And that was actually, if I understand, that was done by your agent, but it was done on the Viva Bolt platform.
So I think what you might be referring is something which is very early in our development process. I think it's a few years ago, the case study which came out with Viva Vault. Today, we're close to 80% reduction in timelines. We work with multiple different systems, not just Viva, Medidata. There's quite a few other platforms which are on the TMF domain, which we work with our clients, depending on the client, really. Or we also have our own alternative to basically support this, right? So there's various ways we can support it. I think the most important thing which we have learned is the industry is really not geared to optimize or to be able to optimize on the vector of utilization. And by that, what I mean is, because it's very manual, all the processes, there is no way to sort of guarantee that any resource in the industry is actually at 100% utility. This is the common issue. And because of that, you're always planning for a situation where you might need the resource, and hence you're gonna, it's hard to like sort of optimize in that regard. I think what we've learned is, if you can bring AI teammates which are highly competent, fairly autonomous in their approach, and really accurate. And I do want to mention that all of our AI work and the AI teammate work is 100% human supervised. So we do supervise everything which the AI is doing. And what we've seen ourselves is we have a very high acceptance rate of the work the AI is doing. So for example, we have close to 92% accuracy right now, or I should say acceptance rate, which means every time an AI calls a call or makes a call, when we supervise it, we're agreeing with it for the most part, 9 out of 10 times. And that means I have a 10x more productivity gain in terms of us versus everybody else in the industry at this point. And I think then you start to realize, well, I have a very interesting economic model, because we have these huge productivity gains, which I can then share with our customers. We can make them more successful, and at the same time build a good business for ourselves, right? So that's the model. And I think the realization right now is, because of the high amount of automation and AI presence in these workflows, you can see most of the industry in certain workflows can get to 100% utility. As in, you can design a process, and you can say, I can keep a person 100% occupied, because the AI is basically like doing most of the work, most of the day to day, and you're supervising it, and your supervision can be 100% occupied, right? So you can scale it very well. I think that's where I see this. That's where I'm very excited about the industry. I think we are just in the first innings, but we're already seeing some amazing results, and we're very happy to sort of work with some of these sponsors and CROs right now to get them there.
That's extremely impressive. And I have to say, something which leads me to my next question, which I hadn't actually planned to ask, which was that, if you have these AI teammates, that means you could probably pretty soon replace the CRO, couldn't you?
No, I don't know about that, because my view has always been, we are in a very human-oriented industry, right? Clinical trials ultimately is a very person to person sort of a relationship based, I think, industry. I think healthcare more or less tends to be that way. So where does the CRO come in? I think they can be really excellent at certain things and probably not need to do a lot of things which are traditionally being done, in the way they are doing it right now. Um, so I tend to have a very clear bar in terms of what AI can do and where you need the human touch or the human supervision. Um, so we generally, yeah, my view is that the industry will have to change. I think the business model will change, but I think the need for uh, the type of service providing which entities like CROs do is going to be there. I think not everybody wants to manage AIs or manage these kind of workflows. So there will be somebody who's willing to do that, and you got to transition into that world, right? So it'll happen.
Yeah, so I mean, for now, it won't happen in the meantime. So, but I wonder. I think it will happen eventually. I don't see in any of these workflow zeros having much added value. That's my own personal opinion. Is that they're just basically billing you for hours, and if you can automate the hours with an AI system, then have one person. And by the way, agentic AI means that you can scale, so you can do 100 sites as easily as you can do one site. So it doesn't matter because it's fast. And on the other hand, if you have to manage 100 sites, if you need a CRA for 100 sites, it's not one CRA, it might be 3 or 4 CRAs. And they come out and monitor the sites once a month or 2 months. So here you can have like basically a system which is running in real time. And of course, clinical trials are not really real time. But I mean, in terms of, the way where the CRO industry is today is real time. So frankly, listening to you, I don't know. Sounds to me like you're going to be an agentic CRO in another year or two or three.
Let me explain this in a bit more, right? Because we do work with quite a few CROs now, and that list is growing rapidly. So, and the reason I think they're not necessarily going away, but they will have to move into a different style of a business model is because ultimately a site relationship is important to manage. No matter what you do, everything else being equal, I think having a great relationship with your site ultimately does lead to better results. And so who is managing that? And the agent is not doing that, I don't think. I mean, I think we're ultimately people, and I do think relationships matter in business and in life. So I sort of tell our clients, hey, like, yes, the AI teammates from Tilda are managing your entire end-to-end regulatory process. We do real-time inspection readiness, just like you said. So for example, you can start up sites, you can run hundreds of sites in parallel. You can do that on day one. You don't have a scaling situation because you can have step function-based scaling because
Of course.
you just spin up as many instances as you want, right, of an agent. So we do all this. This is all reality, and we're already managing several trials, and we're starting to get into phase 3s now. So it's sort of happening, I would say. I think it can happen very quickly too, because of what I'm seeing. I think the gains are phenomenal. So it's hard to sort of like not come into it. But at the same time, I also know that the AI and our AI teammates do need help in many situations, which is where we have what we call a need attention phase. So kind of imagine the AI teammate is tasked with a work, and it's going back and forth with the email and document exchange and whatnot with different sites. It's all happening over email. So the site is just talking to an AI, right? They don't even need to know that we have a platform or anything like that. It's very seamless in terms of integration. But there will be scenarios where the site will have a question, or they need a call, or they need something, right? So that's where we sort of say we're not in that part of the business. We would let you know that our AI teammate needs help, but it's your work or your job then to manage that process for that time being, for that part of the workflow. So you may call it what it is. Maybe parts of this, as you're saying, will definitely have to change because of the tremendous value AI teammates add to just everything we're doing right now. And yeah, we have sponsors. That's why too. That's why we have direct relationship with sponsors as well, right? We're saying, well, I do this in-house, or I use a FSP plus kind of a model where we're happy to try you guys out. And And we're showing value, and that's been exciting. I think people are realizing, wow, like this is phenomenal, right? We're starting to see some real results here. And the nice thing is it's so easy to try and sort of see it. It's sort of like it just works out of the box right now. And we've done all the hard work of training it on, the typical TMF plans, TMF indices, like, DIA standards, ICGCP. So various of these workflows, hundreds and thousands of workflows, which you wrote down and sort of like had to manually like eval and show data on. But it's been good. It's been an interesting situation, I think, in the last 4 months of our launch. And I do expect the industry will have to change. I agree with you, though.
Wait a minute, when did you launch?
We launched just earlier this year, actually, on the product.
So all that's
We've
happening.
been building for about 4 years, just to be
Yeah,
clear.
okay. So I'm not surprised. That part I'm not surprised about. So all this stuff, all this great stuff happened in 4 months. Amazing.
Yeah, we've been around in terms of actual launch just about 4 months now, and so it's been quite an interesting journey so far.
Wow, that's really amazing. So let's go into the how you create value. I understand that we pretty much covered that, but besides TMF and regulatory flows and site startup, what else what other kinds of
Yeah.
teammates do you have?
Yeah, so let me break it down. It depends on the organization we work with. So let's bucket CRO and sponsor into one, just because I would say they're on the trial management initiation side of things, right? There we have 3 different areas where we currently help in. One is the regulatory part, which we just spoke about, includes TMF management, startups, maintenance, closeouts, the whole document lifecycle part of it, including document-related monitoring. So, just keeping the site in compliance on a real-time basis, right? So we manage that. On the second side is the data side of things. So source data verification, your query management, things around what a typical CRA would do. And that extends a little bit further because what we've started to realize is there's some very complex type of monitoring, which today is very hard to do. This could be around tracking samples, for example, which, if you kind of think about it, you had a study with even 100 patients and they had, 10 samples being shipped out to 4 different labs at every visit. Just monitoring and making sure all of the samples are in line, they're actually being received. There's no issues with these samples. Having a real-time ability to figure out something's going wrong so that you can have a conversation with the site or the spawn or the lab. So we're just getting into deeper and deeper use cases for data management and data monitoring, which includes all the traditional things which you and I are familiar with in today's monitoring, but also more advanced, very intensive type of monitoring, which then yields very much better, I would say, risk management on the trial side of things. So that's on the data side. And third one is also another highly operationally intensive process, which is finance and payments. So just managing the finances across the board of a clinical trial, I think, is a day-to-day challenge. There's many invoices which come in, which you would have to review and process and approve and so on and so forth. And at the same time, you have to set up your budgets. You have to sort of have nuances across different sites you're working with, different vendors you're working with. So a very complex workflow, and it starts to get pretty intense. So that's another area where we can help. So those are the 3 areas on the sponsor CRO side. On the site side, sort of similar, slightly different though, in terms of the exact workflow and the value. So on the regulatory side, for sites who we work with, they more or less do not do the manual site startup work. So for example, if I were a site and I'm a coordinator of the site, my typical introduction to a site being selected to a study is an email saying, "Congratulations, you just got selected. Here's a study startup package. Please go ahead and fill this out. Send me all these remaining documents which you are supposed to send me." And then eventually you have to file with the IRB and go through these different processes to get your ICF and things like that. So we manage that end to end. It's as simple as taking that email and forwarding it to our AI teammate, and then the AI teammate basically goes ahead and does the work for you. Because we onboard you onto our platform, we also know what kind of site you are, all your staff, your CVs, your so on and so forth, right? So we have a very seamless process where we can kind of manage that whole regulatory management. So that's on the site side. We also do data entry. So for example, in most sites today, there's a concept of double data entry. Whether you're on electronic source or whether you're on paper source, you're taking in that data, on your own systems or your paper. And then you have to transcribe all of this into another system called EDC, right? It's the entire paradigm of research works this way. There's like a double data entry problem. And I think the reason that will exist and will not probably be easy to solve is because there's a heterogeneous system problem here. There's many, many EMRs and many, many source systems, and none of them can integrate into every single EDC out there. So you've got this very complex problem of integration, which I don't think will ever get solved. But there is a way around it, which is to use an AI teammate to basically look at your either handwritten documents or your electronic source and have a human who will be highly empowered by an AI to basically enter this data into the into the EDC. And so we provide that service, and it's very seamless. Again, you can be on paper, you can be on a source. We take that information, we can enter this. We do this at a very, very high accuracy and a very quick turnaround, typically within hours of data entry. So it's great from a site perspective as well as sponsor perspective, because you get this real-time-ish version of data capture, all managed by an AI, which has predictability around the quality, right? So that's the second one from the sites, and third is finance for sites as well, just managing their invoicing and billing and processing and things like that.
Wow, that's really amazing. So you're taking it really, really far. And
Yeah.
it's you're hitting all of the really gnarly problems that that sites and sponsors have. And
Yeah,
wow,
I will add, Danny, this was an interesting learning for me being at a site, both as a site owner and a coordinator, because the conventional problem was perhaps recruitment, like finding patients. But if I go past that, the rest of the problems were all operational. That could be staffing, that could be retention, work-life balance. Just all of these issues are real, and they're much, much real than any other industry I've seen in clinical trials.
for sure.
So Tilda as a company and my focus has been just empowering sites, empowering the overall ecosystem with operational AI, right? These are like day-to-day problems which we can help you with. And so our AI teammates are basically trained and evaled and continuously being updated in this particular area.
That's a great thing that you're doing. And I think actually the industry is so focused on recruitment because I'm sort of careful when I say this, but there was a study a couple of years ago on colorectal cancer which said that I think the largest single problem was recruitment, which was 40%. But and they sort of like kind of downplayed this was that 60%, the other 60% was operational. And that means that they could have actually rephrased the article. They could have said 60% of all failures in colorectal trials are because of clinical operations problems. Wow. Okay. So really recruitment is an enabler. It's not a problem in its own right. And as a matter of fact, a lot of people like to talk about or do recruitment simply because it's top of funnel and you don't have to integrate with almost anything. So it's like an easy problem to
Yeah.
solve. Unlike the kind of problems you're
It
solving.
is not an easy problem. I have all the respect for people working on that problem because it's probably one of the hardest problems, honestly. But I will tell you one thing, right? It is a core problem which will take up, like you said, 40% of the overall issues. Operation is hard to pin down. There's no one particular problem which you can say is more than 1% of the problem.
Right.
And so that's one of the reasons why we had a long period of building, because I personally felt this is not a sort of a logical step-by-step sort of a value add business. So for example, if I were to build an AI teammate, I can't come in and just say I'll solve this one small tiny area for your problem in operations, because that's just going to be 1 or 2% of your overall issues, right? So you kind of have to think about product building more from like a diffusion perspective, as in like it's not really clear until everything sort of gets clear, right? So you're building the images sort of starting to get a little bit more clearer and clearer, and then once you come in focus, the entire image just comes out, and that's kind of how you get value in these kind of areas, in my opinion, on the operations side. So what we've taken is a very interesting, or I would say, I have read quite a bit about this kind of a startup building, and a good I think an entrepreneur who does an amazing job talking about this is Parker from Rippling. So they're an HR management company, very successful, massive growth. But their approach is that we're what they call a compound startup. They have 20, 30, 40 different problems they pick and they solve. And it's the opposite of what a traditional startup entrepreneur would go through or be advised about, which is your MVP model, which is find the minimal viable product, just one problem, solve that. Use all your focus and resources to just go after one problem because you don't have all the resources and the time and effort to kind of solve for 20 things, right? I actually think the latter approach of compound startups is the place where the world is pushing all of us towards, because most of the SaaS products out there, or whatever existing companies and products out there, have already solved for the MVP use cases. And so you have to derive value by integrating 20, 30, 40 different problems in one, and then holistically solving all of it in one go, right? It'll take time. It'll take a lot of capital to get there. And that's kind of what we've done. We've raised a lot of capital. We've built a phenomenal engineering team, product team. And certainly, like I said, been building the product for about 4 years now. And that's why it's all seamless right now. We can go end to end, deliver value in that kind of straight. So it's been exciting to sort of see the reception and the work we're doing with our customers now.
It must be very gratifying for you.
Yeah.
Taking that journey and wow, and doing all of this, I have I just admire what you're saying, because it just resonates with my own personal experience and what I feel about these things as well. I'm sort of kind of when people will say, "Oh, MVP," I say, "Guys, MVP was 25 years ago. You could do an MVP." Today, people you can buy a complete product to do a point solution. There's like 15 of them or 50 of them. I don't know. So it's like, if someone was telling me the other day, "Oh, you need to cycle," I said, "Look, you're quoting me the agile startup from like 20 years ago by Eric Ries." I said, "It's not true anymore. You can't do that. You have to be able to.
Yeah.
You have to be able to do the kind of things you're doing. You be able to solve gnarly problems." So tell me a bit about, and this is sort of the third question, which is how. So we understand you create tremendous value. You solve gnarly problems, and you take care of work with agentic AI on operations. How do you capture value from your customers?
Yeah. So we've taken the approach that one of the most important things we should do in this industry is give a certain set of attributes which did not exist as of today, right? What is that? Scale, quality, and utilization. And I think in general, if you sort of go with the current type of paradigm, you're going to have to pick one or two of them. And that's what it is. Like, for example, scale. You might be an amazing individual working on a certain role, but there's probably not a million of you, or not a million, but like 1,000 of you, right? It's hard for me to clone you. And so I have this scalability issue. I have high quality, but I have to compromise on scale because of that. So I think for us, it's really important to deliver those as attributes, and within that framework, capture value. And I think there's already great examples of companies which do this really well, especially now from a tech background, you know this, right? So I come from a virtualization background. I built one of the first hypervisors for what kicked off the whole cloud computing era right now. And so we just go with utility-based value capture. So per unit work done, we'll charge you a certain value, a certain unit cost, and only when we do the work, right? So what happens is you're not planning sort of for, it's entirely need driven. So you don't have any fixed costs. You can convert it into an operational cost paradigm. And I think that works really well because then everybody's on the hook, right? We are only capturing value when we deliver value. You're only paying when you actually need something. And I think it changes the paradigm of the entire industry, which is very different today. And I say this because I wish I had this at Lexent. When I was building my the biotech, which I was working on previously, I wish we didn't have these massive burn rates on a monthly basis, because I fundamentally went into that into that journey of going into the biotech route, because I did want to feel like I was making a big impact and working on things which would make a big impact for all of us. But I also am aware that even though we've done good work, we've gotten recognition and eventually got acquired, I still cannot shake this feeling that maybe we could have done 10 more things, like 10 times more work with the resources we've had, right? So I think that sort of goes back to, if I had a more optimal way of like managing my resources and a business model and a service model which allowed me to do that, it would be great. But it hasn't existed so far, and that's exactly where I want to go with this, right? So interestingly, I wouldn't say the utility-based model is exactly how sites are currently being, the economics for a site is utility-based. However, it's not the case for everybody else in the industry, the CROs and the rest of this thing, right? So
Yeah, billing per heads, right? So
yeah.
which is why it's sort of, I can't resist the next question. What I didn't plan to ask it, but I interviewed someone who has a site organization in the Midwest, and he believes, I'll send you the link to the interview. And so basically, he says he thinks that the sites will inherit the industry. He says why? Because the sites have the patience, and is that if you look at large site organizations like Velocity Research, you see that they're basically given the technology, given your technology. Maybe for all I know, you're already working with Velocity. Okay, so and if not, maybe you should be working with Velocity. And the thing is that Velocity Research, especially with your technology, is totally positioned to be the CRO also.
So I look at it this way, right? I think it's much harder to scale the base of this pyramid. I really do. And that, by that, what I mean is, a site network, I think, has inherent limitations on how big they can grow in their footprint across the world, across all indications which exist. And there are certain limitations on this sort of a thing, right? Like I struggle to see how a site network can sort of have 100% of the patient population cover for any indication or any, that sort of thing. It could happen. I think there is a world which that can happen. But I also sort of see from a sponsor perspective, you may want some kind of a diversification strategy there. You might want 3 or 4 different site networks within your trial so that you don't have a key risk kind of an issue, right? A key man risk. So, but I'm also not disagreeing with you, because I do think it can happen, somewhere between where we are today to where we could be going in what you just said. I think there's a middle ground, and that will most likely be where it'll go. So I can see that. I also know that as a site operator, as a site owner, as such, I guess when we acquired a site, and sort of just for a learning purpose, right? This is our reference model to like learn about it. So I've learned a lot, and I think what people may or may not realize about the site industry is it is a business of managing a fixed cost with a variable revenue.
Exactly.
So you have high fixed costs, but then you have variable revenue because you get paid on utility. You get paid on per visit done or per work done, right? So you can already see this is a very challenging business model, which very few people can actually manage and get right, especially in a long term, because generally the economics of the world operate on a cycle. So when you're in a down cycle, it's a very tough business to manage because you don't have as much of a revenue, but you have very high fixed costs, which you probably cannot manage down. And same way, when it's going really great, your revenue tends to shoot up very quickly, or the potential of revenue could shoot up very quickly, but then your fixed costs will also rise. And so you've got this like very interesting trend management, which is very, very difficult to do. And in fact, I say that because I've seen the story in the let's just say data center capacity planning, just like tech-based like spend, right? When as I said, I was one of the early guys at VMware, and when we were building this, it's very clear. Like if you're a company trying to plan for, let's just say you're e-commerce, right? Amazon. Why did Amazon become the de facto AWS services, and why did it come out of that kind of a company? Because That's an organization which had very high fixed costs on their server infrastructure because they always had to plan for their Christmas Day surge. That was or Thanksgiving or one of these like 2 or 3 days in the year basically set the benchmark for how much capacity planning they had to do. I think sites suffer a similar type of an issue where they have to plan for a certain type of a capacity, whether you use it or not, and then managing that business is kind of difficult, right? But anyway, given all that what I've said, I think something like where we are going, an AI teammate and a business model which is 100% utility based, only only when we deliver value we'll charge you, and that's totally doable for us because it's an AI based workflow, right?
In
So
scale, right? So you don't care if it's one patient or 100 or 1,000.
that's correct, and we can do it instantly, so we don't need to have any sort of pre-planning except for compute, which exists in abundance right now, right, in this paradigm. So
Yeah, it's not actually that. It's probably, my guess is it's probably not that. It's not probably not that dramatic either. So I mean, so the amount of processing.
yeah, I think I wouldn't say clinical research is a super scale type of an industry, right? It's definitely like subscale. We're dealing with
Oh yeah, definitely.
maximum of a few million patients. So yeah, so it's
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, our first customer was a I think an oncology trial, and they said something about I think that 23 sites, and they were using a system, and saying it's going to take them 6 months to complete SDV and be ready for the interim data review. And I'm looking at them, I said, why? And the CRO said, the CEO of the CRO said, but you know, it's a lot of data. I said, what are you talking about? It's not a lot of data. When I was at Fidelis, we were doing 10 gigabit XDR, okay, 10 gigabit XDR, 10 gigabit a second, okay, so that's a lot of data.
yeah,
Okay, and if we could do XDR in real time, then you have to explain to me, because I'm struggling to understand why it's taking you 6 months to clean data for 120 patients across 23 sites. So it's like,
yeah.
yeah, and you guys can do it in a second. It's like, no problem.
Yeah, exactly. And this is exactly the question I was asking while at Lexent, working with our ClinOps partners, and thinking, wow, how does this make any sense? But it is what it is. That's how the industry worked, and
No, I'm
we
not
do it.
complaining. I'm just resonating with you on this point, and it's totally.
Yeah. No, I think you're right, Annie. I think these are obvious problems you can see, but there is not a great solution which you can actually latch onto, right? I'm hoping we are that one, and we certainly are doing really good work. But I think we need more companies like ourselves. We need to sort of help the industry move away from this kind of a pace, this kind of a cost curve. I think it brings a lot of value to everybody involved. I really think just a side note here, even the economics of biotech right now, biotech is in a I don't know, historical low cycle right now as we speak, right? This is the worst it's been from many I don't know, many decades, I would say. And so what does that even mean, right? Because we've got unbelievable value being attributed to companies in the AI domain, like ours and every other company in the just the pure AI domain. But when it comes to life-saving medicine and the innovation cycle on the biotech cycle, it's basically very depressed today. I don't look at it from, I mean, yes, there's all the other externalities and factors and regulation issues like that, but I also kind of think about it from a perspective of, if I were an investor, if I were purely looking as an investment, what is the risk reward involved today with a biotech? I would say it's very, very skewed. It's not very good because for all the challenges we just said, right? It takes forever to get a drug into market. It costs like $1 or $2 billion to get a drug into market. These are not attractive risk reward propositions from an investor standpoint. What really we should be doing is 80%, reduction in all sorts of workflow based, like, you should get like a 10x productivity across all these workflows, right? And what that does is it does bring down that cost curve time without compromise on quality. And I'm hoping that means that now investors or the community, I mean, we are in a capitalistic world, and the principle of capitalism, if it's for profit maximization, then I would think there'll be more capital coming in because the risk reward is now very attractive. So why are we running only like 5 trials in a certain area? Maybe we should be doing 50 or 500 or 5,000, right? Who knows? It's the same thing as maybe when you and I are talking about pre and post virtualization, pre and post cloud, right? How many companies get formed on a regular basis today versus before all of this, right? So I'm hoping that's the paradigm which Tilda can get to. We can enable that, and I certainly see no reason why it wouldn't happen at least the pace at which we're going.
I think it will happen, which is a perfect intro to my final question to you. Is 3 things you want to do for your customers, who are sites, who are sponsors, or CROs, in the next 12 to 18 months? 3 things. You have a budget of 3 things.
Yeah. Okay, let's see. I think one for sure, which is very high in motivation and just alignment from a vision and mission perspective for us, is allowing our customers to massively expand their ability to do scientific process. So, we want to deliver at least a 10 times more productivity across 80% of their workflows. So that's the goal I have. It's ambitious for 18 months, but I think that's kind of where we want to go. And by that, what I mean is I think then the same customers can now think about doing way more than what they can potentially even imagine today. Maybe they should do 10 times more, whatever that might be, more trials or more patients, or however they want to do it, right, or faster. So that's one goal which I think is very, very clear for us. We got to do that. The second one would be, I think, more from a the value and the ROI perspective, because I think that has to get solved very quickly because the industry is suffering right now. The industry is in a very much of a low point, like I said, on a cycle, and I think that has to come down to your efficiencies and your utilization rates, because that'll solve for some of the ROI improving. So it is a productivity thing, but I define it very clearly. I would love to see the industry operate at a 100% utilization. And by that, what I mean is they're only paying for things when they actually see the work done, right? And I think that paradigm shift is very much doable with what we're doing. So I'd like to go there, and I'd like to show there, and we will continue to build services in this regard, right? So the 100% utilization is important, or reduction in all non-billable hours. I just don't want to see anything called non-billable anywhere. I just think that should be out of the window. I think the third one is doing all of this with extremely high quality, because you can never compromise on that. In fact, if you do, I think it'll set the entire AI-driven approaches many years back, right? So it's very, very critical that you don't do things, or you release products which are unable to actually deliver on the quality side. So I mean, like I said, we are 100% human supervised, even though it's an AI-driven approach. But even in human supervision, there are many layers of quality you can introduce and really set the bar so high, much better than where we are today. So I think my third goal would be offering all these great advantages, but at a 100% inspection readiness posture in real time, right? And just doing it really well, doing it better than anything else which can happen today. So I think with these 3 type of deliveries, I would say, yeah, you could seriously disrupt the industry, really set it forward from where we are today. So.
Well, if that happens in 18 months, you're going to change the whole industry, I think.
We are hoping to get there. Yeah, we have to.
Well, after, right? It's a good deed that's going to happen if you do that. It'll be a very good deed. My name is Danny Lieberman. I'm the host of Life Sciences Today. I'm here with Ram, who's the founder and CEO of Tilda Research. Okay. And they're using agentic AI to automate pretty soon almost everything in the clinical trial operation cycle. And it's a pleasure, Ram, to have you. We'll go live in about 2 weeks. It takes that long. Before I started the podcast, I had no idea how much actual work is involved. That's probably my next side project, is to develop an agentic AI system to process podcasts and publish 5 minutes after it's done. And it's totally possible. It's not rocket science. And and so when we do go live, I'll notify you and Abdul. Um, on all the major podcast channels on Apple and YouTube and Spotify, of course. And it's
Okay.
just been a pleasure having you on the show.
Yeah. Thank you, Danny. I enjoyed it.